only progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your ear.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
We are back, and in this hour, we are tracking today's breaking and trending news with Dr. Raphael Sonnenschein and Jamar Brown. Thanks so much to both of you for returning today. It has been a busy day at the Supreme Court, and some of these cases that the court has agreed to take up in this term are really scary because the outcomes, depending on how this 6-3 conservative majority court rules, could have significant impact on women, on voters, and on folks that we believe to be thugs and insurrectionists. Let's start with you, Rafe. How are you feeling about these cases? There's the abortion pill case that the court is going to take up. There is the case of the insurrectionist that says the federal statute that he was prosecuted under was inappropriately applied to him and could have implications for the hundreds of insurrectionists that have been tried and incarcerated and could impact Donald Trump's upcoming criminal trial. And then there's this gerrymandering case where the court says, hey, this rigged map by the Republicans that eliminates a black and brown voting district in Galveston, Texas. Is okay, no problem. Use that map. Let the white folks win like they cheating, but just let them win. I mean, I'm kind of being tongue in cheek about it, but that's kind of how it feels like the court is deciding at least that case. But, what's your reaction to this very active day with the Supreme Court?
Gee, what could possibly go wrong with an active day with the Supreme Court? Just hard to imagine. The thing is, you never know what this court will do because they generally just make stuff up. And some days they come down on what I would consider the right side and some days the wrong side, but it's hard to predict because they're so inconsistent. I think they're probably worried about the reaction to the overturning Roe versus Wade. So they have to think about how they make a decision in something that really handles half of abortions in the country. Maybe they'll try to split the argument a little bit and not make a fundamental decision on voting rights. I'm never optimistic with this court. Now, with the Trump case, it seems likely that Trump might not win on this, that he might actually have most of the court actually allow the Jack Smith case to go forward on January 6th. I don't know about the other defendants because who knows, the court, they'll find a precedent in something that happened in 1802 from some.
No, even before the country was started. Sometimes they go so far back, we weren't even a country.
It could go back to the 1400s, based on some bogus history book. So you never know. They start with kind of where they want to go, and then they come back and find an argument for it. But I think they have to be worried about the reaction to the overturning of Roe versus Wade because it is literally making it very hard for Republicans to win elections. And it has to be the leading issue for the Democrats in 2024. And do they want in 2024 to add more kindling to that fire? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that abortion case is a blessing in disguise because many folks were fearful that if we didn't have some big abortion issue pending, the Democrats couldn't leverage the successes that we've seen in Ohio and Kentucky and other, red states around that abortion issue. And maybe this case, Jamar, is that case that keeps this front and center because we know we're not likely to get a decision from the court until the summer of next year, just as people are starting to think about the election, just as we're going into the convention season for both parties. And as Rafe has said, Republicans can't catch a break on this abortion issue. And now, after Kate Cox was denied access to abortion in Texas, we see more pregnant women becoming the face of this abortion, and they are pregnant white women. So they speak to a demographic in ways that I can't, you can't, and even non-pregnant people can't. So what do you make of the abortion case? I was kind of worried about it because, it has implications for the FDA, because we know the abortion pill has been approved by the FDA. So there are all kinds of, unintended consequences that could happen from this case. But now that Rafe raises the point about, how it has galvanized voters, maybe it's a good thing that the court takes it up.
Well, yeah, to your point, Areva, right, that we're expecting a result of this sometime in the summer, which is right before the election, and folks should be paying attention. But look at what happened just last month in Ohio, right, where people came out and said, we believe in freedom. We believe in the right to choose. We believe in folks accessing health care. Abortion is health care. And at some point, the Republicans or the conservatives, they have to learn that, right? Voters have shown up in Kansas. They've showed up in Kentucky. They showed up in Ohio. And we're looking at ballot measures all over the country, quite frankly, next year, in addition to this court case. And so at some point, the conservatives would have to learn. But what we're looking at when we look at the Supreme Court, if you look at the last 5 years, 3 of the last 4 justices that were appointed were by Donald Trump, right, who is a candidate in this election. And so a lot of those factors are also playing together. And I do think that this issue, because the Republicans have been attacking abortion access, especially the last 20 years, I do think that this will still continue to galvanize folks. But it is also very tiring for folks and for voters as well. And we have to recognize that even with some of the president's challenges, going forward in this election. But it will galvanize folks. How much, we'll see, where folks still have to keep voting to defend their rights.
Yeah, I think one of the things Democrats should do, Rafe, is take that Ken Paxton letter, the letter that he wrote to 3 hospitals after a lower court in Texas last week or 2 weeks ago ruled that Kate Cox fell under the very limited exception under the 6-week abortion ban law in Texas. And you have this disgraced attorney general writing a letter to 3 hospitals saying, if you give this woman an abortion, we will criminally prosecute you, felony prosecution, and you could face up to $100,000 fine. I think that letter is so powerful. It's such a phenomenal exhibit that Democrats should use as to why any candidate that is not pro-choice should not have a snowball's chance in hell of winning. And then you put that with using some stories from young girls. Someone said something to me that was very powerful. They said, look, you have white women and white dads thinking about their daughters. In some of these states, if your daughter is raped by her uncle, which happens all the time, she literally would be forced to carry to term at 10 years old a child, forced to carry a fetus to term and deliver a baby at 9 months that, could just rip her genitals apart, just all the havoc, having had 3 babies. It takes a lot to have kids. I think that's resonating finally, even with those conservatives, Rafe.
Oh, there's no question. And of course, Democrats, as you know, believe a word to the wise is sufficient, which is, of course, the world's worst political strategy. It's about 1,000 words screaming and before you get through, but it has gotten through. And in many ways, the Democrats just have to ride the wave that's already out there, and they don't have to create it themselves. But you've hit it, Areva. A lot of it's about people and stories about people, and the stories are very tragic. What about women who can't afford to leave Texas? Right. In this circumstance, for every one person who got away, which the person in this case is able to go to another state, there's probably 9 or 10 who can't. So there's a story to be told. And with all the news going on, about 1 million things going on, a lot of the battle is keeping the focus on the issues that really matter, which is rights, the right to choose, and also the survival of the democracy. I mean, it's really hard in the middle of everything to keep that going, keep that focus.
Yeah, telling those personal stories, getting doctors who now are afraid to practice medicine for fear that they can be prosecuted, for fear that they may have to pay some serious fine. Doctors who will not go into states like Texas, doctors who are fleeing states like Texas because of that fear. I think, Jamar, just having between the pregnant women, the parents of 10 to 13-year-old girls talking about rape and incest, which again is very real. And then having pregnant people talk about being forced to carry a fetus that may only live one day outside the womb, being forced to carry a fetus to term, knowing that it could substantially and permanently impact your ability to have children in the future. And again, I don't want to be like, the person that sees race around every corner, but I do see race around every corner. Having white women telling these stories is going to be, I think, so powerful in ways that I just think it would be almost impossible. And let me just add this, Jamar. Does this give us a chance as Dems to talk about judges? Because, we don't really talk a whole lot about judges the way Republicans do. We don't have the Federalist Society, but this might give us an opportunity to also tell people that's why it doesn't matter if Joe Biden is 90 and can't get out the bed. His administration is going to be better for us than anything remotely, like a Trump administration.
Absolutely. And I think this opens the door to talk not just about judges, but attorney generals, district attorneys, solicitors across the country, people who are going to have to make these charging and prosecuting decisions, right, under the laws that have been passed in a lot of these conservative states. And in Texas, at least, and several other states across the country also, judges are elected, right? When you register to vote and you make sure your voter registration is updated, you show up to the polls, you actually can vote on who the judges are. In Texas, we vote for the Supreme Court justices, right? The very people who just maintained that Kate Cox could not access abortion care in Texas were just reelected in the last election, right? And so, at the end of the day, it's not just about the judges, it's also about the attorney generals and prosecutors as well. And why the presidential race is so important is we saw, like I just mentioned earlier, right, Donald Trump got to appoint in his 4-year term 3 Supreme Court justices, which actually changed the policy, if you will, construct of the court, which is why you're seeing these things roll back. It's not just abortion. It's been affirmative action. It's been campaign finance reform. It's been other forms of healthcare, also as well. And so the decisions that we're making now are going to impact us over the next generation. And I hope that voters begin to look past some of the aesthetics of the election and really start looking at the issues and how these offices and impact those issues for their children, their grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and folks in the future.
Yeah, this is not a popularity contest. This is a competency and capacity contest.
Absolutely.
And if you see it that way, is no doubt that Democrats will win. When we come forward, we got to talk about this bogus Republican House impeachment inquiry. A fishing expedition, to say the least. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
We are back, and in this hour, we are tracking today's breaking and trending news. And in hour two, I'm going to talk to a Harvard Law alumni that signed a petition in support of keeping President Claudine Gay on after there was this effort to oust her based on comments she made during December 5th hearing before the GOP lawmakers committee that convened three presidents or convened a hearing and basically forced three university presidents to show up to talk about anti-Semitism on their campuses, what they were doing to address it. Some folks didn't like what President Gay had to say, and they decided not only would they lead a campaign to oust her, they would also call into question her impeccable credentials. So in hour two, I'm going to talk about this really outrageous attack on President Gay with a former university president and an alumni of Harvard. Get their take on this. What is all this outrage? And why would a woman with a PhD from Harvard, undergraduate degree from Stanford University, why would her credentials ever be challenged by anyone? So make sure you stick around for hour 2. But Jamar, I got to talk about this impeachment inquiry. This is a prosecution without a crime. If we've ever seen one, you have Republicans moving forward, with this just ridiculously politically motivated impeachment inquiry, tit for tat. Donald Trump was impeached. So now we're in power. We're going to impeach your guy, even though there's no high crime or misdemeanor to be found. Some of the alleged crimes have to do with Joe Biden's son, Hunter, borrowing money maybe from his dad to pay a car note and Joe writing him a check back for the car note. I mean, the evidence is so weak. It's really laughable. What's your take on what the Republicans are doing today around this impeachment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Areva, this is a grave misuse of power where they could actually be utilizing their power to advance policy for the country. They rather spend their time and resources and our tax dollars, quite frankly, on going for an inquiry without a crime, as you just said. The evidence is so weak. It would not stand up in the court of law, right? And some of them are attorneys, unfortunately. And, when you think of some of those things, but one of the things I think that's important to recognize about this is not only the point about tit for tat, this is really about Republicans still trying to defend Donald Trump. And they're still using the levers of power within an institution to do that, at the end of the day, whether they've endorsed him directly for his campaign or not. And that's really dangerous, right? That they're spending time at the Oversight Committee, they're spending time in the House really talking about these issues. There's still a spending bill that's got to come back forward because we only had a continuing resolution that lasted a few weeks. There's still the farm bill that needs to happen, right, where nutrition is involved, where millions of farmers are relying on the benefits of that legislation. There's still the spending package that needs to be done around Ukraine and other things that the president has put forward. And so there's just real business that they should be doing. They weren't elected to investigate people randomly. They were elected to actually pass policy and to have impact for their constituents. And so a grave misuse of power, but not surprising. They've been doing it for Donald Trump.
Yeah, what do you make of this, Rafe? Their claim is that we've got to open this official inquiry because otherwise the Democrats won't respond to our subpoena request, et cetera. But we know that this is all politically motivated. And as Jamar said, they're trying to score points with the leader of their party, i.e. Donald Trump, so he can go out on the campaign trail and tell his supporters that Joe Biden is being impeached, that the Biden family is one of the most corrupt families in politics and in the history of some of these claims are so outrageous. And here's Joe Biden, been in public office longer than I've been alive, basically. And we know everything about his finances. He's had to file umpteen hundred, disclosure statements. And not until the Republicans are in power has there ever been any suggestion of wrongdoing. And let's even, be clear, the alleged wrongdoing, which we know, it's all bogus, didn't even happen when he was in office.
Usually when you go on a fishing expedition, it's because there's some fish. It's kind of like so calling it a fishing expedition, I think, overestimates it. I think this is the price that Mike Johnson has to pay to get any other legislation past the Freedom Caucus. It was part of the initial promise. McCarthy made the same promise and actually was talking about opening this. What fascinates me is the 18 Biden Republicans in the House, all of whom voted for this measure, which is directly against their reelection interests. I mean, directly. Mm-hmm. And a reminder that Trump may control House Republicans, but he doesn't protect their interests.
So what's your take on why they would do it? Like, these are 18 Republicans that their districts voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden. They resisted this impeachment for many, many months. They were the ones saying, no, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Some of it, came right out and were honest, called it a hoax. Why now?
Well, I think this is Trump's impact on the party. Most parties, and Jamar knows this, he's way more experienced than I am. You let your representatives vote their district very often in order to keep your majority. Donald Trump doesn't care whether they keep the majority. He cares whether they go down the line, and he wants to get revenge for his impeachment. And they kind of feel they have no choice. It's a pretty, I mean, I'm not sympathetic for being in a tough spot, but they really are hurting their reelection chances at this point that are already hurt. 18 of them. That's more than enough for the Democrats to win the House. And when you add the seats in New York with the possible redistricting, I don't know what thought process they go through. I mean, a normal member of Congress would not vote for this and go to the party leaders and say, hey, I just had to do this. I couldn't go with you on this. Jamar, does that exist anymore in the House? I don't think it's there.
Well, not on the Republican side, especially those who are worried about people primarying them to the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jamar, Rafe is asking good questions. Why would these Republican lawmakers put their own race at risk just to, be a part of the Donald Trump mob in Congress, knowing that this could cost them their seats?
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's two parts to it, right? I think there's the political part. Do you want to lose in the primary or the general? Which one do you want to lose in? Because if you don't make it out of the primary, you definitely lost, right?
Right.
And then I think there's the second part, too. There's always the internal pieces in the caucus, right? Whether it's later on committee appointments and chairman and chairwomanships. Want to be gender inclusive here. But, right, and so I think those two things, right? How do they play to their base, right? And how do they get their base to the point of the general election? And then also inside, they want to be committee chairs, right? They want to pass legislation, supposedly,
but Jamar,
through their caucus.
They can't be committee chairs if they are not in power, because if the Democrats win the House, they're going to be toast. Right. They ain't going to chair nothing.
Well, absolutely. But they're thinking that, I think they're thinking, too, in addition to that point, right, that Donald Trump is the type that will go after you, right? If you don't vote the party line. And so, at the end of the day, you should vote your district. You should vote for what makes sense and what is competent. But when your leader of your party just says, go with me or else, it puts them in a position that the else is probably their primary, and they're just not taking that risk. And that's a lack of political courage, quite frankly.
Good point. So, yeah, if you lose in the primary, you never make it to the general, obviously. So you got to decide which poison, you want to take. Well, we want to talk about the economy. We've got such great news on the economy lately, but Rafe, you keep reminding us that there's so much news. Oftentimes news on the economy and how good the economy is doing gets lost. And I want to talk about why people still keep banging on Biden for the economy and saying that somehow we do better under Republicans. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town. All right, I'm Dr. Cortez, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union. Weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out snapshot of news of the day and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We are back and we are tracking today's trending and breaking news with my expert contributors, Dr. Raphael Sonnenschein and Jamar Brown. And in hour two, we're going to be talking to two African-American women, both super accomplished, one an alumni of Harvard Law School, the other a former college president, about the white outrage and efforts to oust the first African-American female president of Harvard University. So make sure you stick around for hour two. Jamar, the Federal Reserve did not lower the interest rates today. People, we've been watching to see what the feds were going to do, but they did signal that there is likely to be a reduction in the interest rate that will come next year. There was this sunny kind of report from the Fed Reserve chair expressing optimism about the economy. You know, the unemployment rate has been incredibly low. The number of jobs created each month have been, the likes of which we've never seen. Inflation is coming down. Prices are coming down. A lot of good economic news. How come it doesn't appear to be breaking through, and you still have folks saying, oh my God, I did so much better, or we do so much better when Republicans are in office? That was recently said by some of the young students at the University of Alabama during the GOP debate. They were asking college students what they thought about the candidates. And many said, oh, my family, or we do so much better economically under Republicans. That's just a outdated trope, but people, still parrot that.
Yeah, well, I think this is the unique challenge, if you will, for us Democrats, right? And this came up during the last cycle where, the inflation was the talk, right, that Republicans were using. And there was the Inflation Reduction Act and lots of investments going out in the 2022 and still happening, right? There was the American Rescue Plan and those sort of things. What I think the Democrats have to do going into this next election is you have to take this thing and make it granular for people. It's great that you have billions of dollars in investment, right, that go to clean energy, that go to infrastructure, that go to farmers, like all these things. But at the end of the day, the thing that voters are going to ask you about is what is in their pocket. Can they feed their families? Can they send their children to school, right? Can they afford their health care? And these are the fundamental kitchen table issues that we have to get back to. And we, as Democrats, I believe, in the 80s and 90s did a wonderful job of talking about not just the economy as this whole macro system, but talking about what does it mean for your day-to-day life and how our policies are actually helping move you forward in your day-to-day life. And I think that's the challenge that the Biden-Harris campaign, that Democrats up and down the ballot are going to have to address so that people feel the impacts of the legislation that were passed.
Great point. And before I let the two of you go, Rafe, I do want to talk about of these comments we're hearing back and forth between Biden and Netanyahu. Biden seemingly breaking with Netanyahu, criticizing him. A lot of pressure internally by U.S. citizens on Biden. 18,000 Palestinians dead. And Netanyahu seems to be, digging in and making it pretty clear that he's not interested in a two-state system, that he is not interested in any Palestinian governing of, the Palestinian people, and that Israel plans to be there to occupy that region, despite the fact that Joe Biden and top U.S. officials have said that is not in any way an option that the U.S. would support. Are these two world leaders who have often quarreled, often hugged, have had a love-hate relationship, are they having another breakup? What do you think is happening?
It's domestic politics in both countries. I mean, it's fascinating. Netanyahu has a right-wing coalition that's even more right-wing than he is. And in a parliamentary system, you can avoid elections as long as you keep your coalition together. So he's trying to prove to them that he can stand up to Biden. His problem is Biden is very popular in Israel right now. He's a lot more popular than Netanyahu. And if they had a system with recalls, like Schwarzenegger won in 2003, Netanyahu would be out on the street, but they don't. So he can't push Biden as hard as he thinks he can push Biden. Biden is dealing with a lot of the other countries in the surrounding area that Israel wants to have good relations with. And those countries are saying progress has to be made on a two-state solution. And that was a big part of Netanyahu's appeal, that he could make a deal with Saudi Arabia and some of these other countries. Biden has a lot more leverage in this situation because he was so supportive of Israel at the start. That's what people don't get. That's what gives him the leverage to push back on Netanyahu, which he would not have been able to do if Israeli voters didn't see him as a friend of the country. It's a fascinating two-state politics thing happening at the same time, in addition with the two largest Jewish populations in the world with somewhat different political views. We could have like a whole hour or two just on that politics.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, because, there was a lot of criticism, internally, U.S. internally, Jamar, on Biden for this big hug, this big embrace of Netanyahu. Now we see Biden stepping back, starting to be more critical and responding to some of the folks in the U.S. who have said, the way this war is being handled, is not targeted enough. It's not surgical. Now we have these videos of soldiers out breaking up kids' toys and breaking up candy and seemingly just, doing callous acts that have nothing to do with taking out Hamas. And now 18,000 people dead. Do you expect to see a major shift along the lines that we've seen, from the Biden-Harris administration? Do you expect Biden to get even tougher in terms of his rhetoric towards Israel?
I do think that he will. However, to Rafe's point, right, where Biden has to manage his own domestic policy, right? And the flip side of it is Biden's party, which is more left of him now, right, on some of these issues, right, where folks have been calling for a ceasefire, folks have been calling for a shift in strategy around the war as well. And so Biden has the flip side, and Biden's also up for re-election. And so at the end of the day, you've got to navigate, some of those pieces. But I know Biden to be a very strategic person. He also takes his time in a lot of things. And, we're obviously operating with an electorate that wants things to happen faster. But when you're dealing with Israel, Saudi Arabia, other countries, it takes a minute to get through some of these diplomatic conversations. And so, at the end of the day, I do think that they're going to get tougher. And I think that as those conversations begin to evolve now, especially when we're seeing a lot of the things like you're saying, 18,000 folks killed, other violence and humanitarian aid being blocked from being able to go into the country, et cetera, Biden's going to have to start getting tougher to also get his base to be more content with how he is handling Israel.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Seems like the language and the rhetoric is changing. And a lot of people, were very critical of Joe Biden in those early days, right after the attack on Israel by Hamas. It's going to be fascinating, though, Rafe, to see what happens. I mean, we've been talking about a two-state system in this region of the world for, again, probably longer than I've been alive. So I'm not very hopeful that in Biden's administration, even in his second administration that's going to happen. And as the news changes, obviously the war is less dominant in the news cycle already. What do you think happens next year when we are further away from the daily news cycles about this war? Does this just kind of quietly, go back to the way it's always been in the Middle East?
I think in the domestic politics side, neither side is going to win this debate. This debate's going to go on for years. The real debate is who wins the election in November. And if we're still talking about this as maybe a third or fourth of what we're talking about, that's going to make it very difficult for Biden in the re-election. So it's often about what you're talking about. He can't resolve this by himself. The arguments in the Democratic Party they're going to have to be argued, but in the context of the fact that there's an election coming. And that election, as somebody said, wonderfully focuses the mind. It's going to be a binary choice in November, and people aren't going to be able to get everything, whichever side they're on this debate. Neither side's going to get everything they want by November of 2024, but they're still going to have to make a choice.
Yeah, you're right. There are no seconds. As folks, think Nikki Haley, Jamar has a chance at something. There's not a whole lot in being second in the primary process. Real quickly, Nikki got a lot of credit after she got some big endorsements, some big donors on the GOP side. Even a Democratic donor threw some money into a PAC supporting her. What's going to happen with Nikki Haley going into these Iowa caucuses in the next 10, 15 days?
Yeah. I know we're wrapping up. I want to make one additional point to what Rafe was sharing. I'd be curious to see where we are in terms of discussion around the war during the conventions, because there are platform discussions and different things that happen. And if y'all remember the 2016 convention, it was the TPP, it was the big trade thing, right? So every convention, it's something. And so I'm curious to see that. But to the question around Nikki Haley is, at the end of the day, and I grew up in South Carolina. I watched how she worked her way from the bottom of that primary to the top of that primary to actually be elected governor. And so Nikki Haley has been doing this surgically, right? Getting some endorsements here, working this part of the base here, really talking about different issues. And I think she's shown herself today around the abortion issue because she tried to be a moderate. But she did come out today and say overturning Roe was one of the better decisions, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, right?
Right.
And so does that appeal to the base in enough time when the caucus is only a few weeks away? I don't know. I think they waited later to skewer some of these endorsements and some of those pieces. But I think it'll be important to see how she does in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. And can she get a considerable amount of vote against Trump, or is his dominance over the party still real?
Yeah, great points. She has been flip-flopping all over the place on abortion, and maybe today has found her comfortable place. I don't believe it's authentic, but at least, it's what she's saying today, hopefully to try to, in her mind, probably to win over those super conservative women in the base. Doesn't seem like there is any chance so that she overtakes the MAGA base that is supporting Donald Trump. But as you said, she has been surgical in other elections. So thank you so much, Jamar. Thank you so much, Rafe. We are out of time. Always a pleasure to spend an hour with both of you. I'm so much smarter as a result of doing so. When we come forward, more on this ouster or proposed ouster of the president of Harvard University right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Thanks, guys.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 15.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories.